Good evening, everyone. Are we ready? I'll just let you get settled, Lottie. No, it's all right. Good evening, I'm Councillor Maureen Cleaser, the Chair of the Housing and Community Cohesion Policy Advisory Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting, along with our millions of viewers on YouTube. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings, as Councillor Mackay is not here and not reserving his rights? I take it that nobody will be. I ask so that people at the meeting will know this will be happening. If the fire alarm sounds during the meeting, please remain seated and members, or in our case, a member of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. As we've all been to these meetings before, I take it you all know this and where the loos are, especially if you're a certain age like me. Item 1, are there any... Yeah, will do. Yeah. Can we just get the apologies out of the way and the subs, and then I'll tell you a slight change of order.
Councillor David Nagy, a Cabinet Member for Community Cohesion, does apologise. He was due to have an operation today that was cancelled, but obviously it's disrupted his day, and he does sincerely apologise for not being able to come. He's asked me to come along and observe the beginning of the meeting in case there was anything for him.
Thank you, Councillor English, and I'm sure we wish Councillor Nagy well. It must be really frustrating for him. I also have apologies from Councillor Ford and Councillor Kadka, and I've not been notified of any subs. Just to make you aware, there is a slight change to the agenda. Item 13, corporate strategy, will be taken before the medium-term financial strategy and budget proposals tonight. There are no urgent items, and I cannot see any visiting members. Do any members and officers have any disclosures? No. And I'm not aware of any lobbying on any issue on this committee. Thursday might be slightly different at planning, but there you go. Item 7. I move that all items be taken in public. However, if members wish to discuss the information contained within the exempt appendices, item 15, exempt appendix to item 8, part 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of December 24, or item 16, exempt appendices to item 14, Maidstone East Sandlin Road Project Delivery and Investment Plan, formerly demolition and contamination update, it will be necessary to move into closed session due to the likely disclosure of exempt information for the reasons specified, having applied the public interest test. Is that agreed? Agreed. And from a personal position, can we start getting really sort of shorter titles for things, because it certainly is a mouthful. Item 8 is part 1 and 2 minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of December, and they are pages 1 to 6, which are, and 192 and 193. Are there any comments on the minutes? None? Then I move that part 1 and 2 minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of December 2024 be approved as the correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 9, presentation of petitions. There are none. Item 10, which is pages 7 to 13, which is the forward plan relating to the committee terms of reference. Are there any comments on the forward plan, or do the Cabinet members wish to make any comments? No? Okay, I move that the forward plan be noted. Is that agreed? Item 10 is the public sector-led garden community, which is on pages 14 to 24. That will be introduced by Councillor Wales, the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness. I don't know whether there's any officers present wanting to speak. Yeah, Helen Garnett present to speak on that as well. Note that the recommendations are on page 15. So over to you, Councillor Wales.
Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, I need to apologise that I forgot to put my hearing aids in and realised 3/4 of the way here that I haven't got them. So if people could speak up a little bit or more clearly than usual, that would be helpful because I'm not on the loop. And if I don't hear anything, then I'll just ignore it. It's a good excuse, I suppose, there's any. Anyway, so Heathlands, and thank you to Helen Garnett being next to me to pick up any technical questions. So the public sector-led garden community Heathlands was initiated by Maidstone Borough Council, acting as land promoter and developer, and not as the planning authority. This was done in 2019. In 2021, the council entered a joint venture with Homes England to further advance the project, ostensibly to promote Heathlands through Maidstone's local plan review, to secure it as an allocation, and then to submit outline planning application for Heathlands. Homes England undertook also to take on a broader role for Heathlands, broader than Maidstone's role, that is, in terms of undertaking the land assembly from the principal landowners. The partnership with Homes England has proven robust throughout the lifespan of the joint venture, and there is a productive working relationship established between officers on both entities. And those of us on the working panel can attest to that as well. The initial aim of the JV has been achieved in 2024, in as much as Heathlands is now an allocation in Maidstone's adopted local plan review. And furthermore, it is the largest allocation in the LPR and is now essential to delivering Maidstone's broader housing supply. And as it is in there, it's beholden to us to get the best deal and the best arrangement we can for the site. The precursor to submitting the outline planning application would ideally be for the local planning authority to adopt a supplementary planning document for Heathlands. The joint promoters are now supporting the local planning authority with this task, are in the process of providing them with a comprehensive evidence base to include several technical surveys which will inform the SPD contents. Assuming the SPD is adopted in late 2025, it is envisaged that the outline planning application will be submitted in 2027, with the intention being that the first homes are built by the end of this decade. The business case for the Heathlands railway station, which is a requirement of the site policy in the LPR, is also being advanced by the co-promoters. The report asks the committee to note the progress made to date, which has been strong, and also to approve the further financial investment in this project. Any monies that the council invests in the project will be recovered as a top slice off any receipts generated through the onward sales of development land parcels. So our money is returned to us sliced off the top first. So it's returned to the commercial development, land parcels to the development sector, assuming the project proceeds to the delivery stage. Furthermore, should the project reach this stage, the council will have the right of first refusal to require the envisaged 40% affordable housing, about 1,600 affordable homes on the site, and the 14 hectares of commercial property land too. So, as you will have seen from the report, a lot of progress has been made, and the further monies which are being asked for are mostly as a result of various unforeseen things that needed more money spent on them, or further reports that needed to be commissioned, things like that, things that often happen in this sort of process. But the good news is, as I said, that this money is top sliced off the top. Any questions of a technical nature? Then we have Helen next to me here to help out with those. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Councillor Wales. Helen, did you wish to come in now, or got anyone got any questions? Any councillors? Councillor Parfitt?
Where this money is coming from? Is that coming? I know I can see Mark in the background there. Is this money coming from the money that we drew down, that we borrowed? Is it coming from there?
I understand it to be coming just from our general pot of monies that we have. So it's money that we've drawn down, which is there to be used for housing. So if it comes back, it'll come back into that pot as well. So it's not lost.
Cool.
Right, I see no more questions. Sorry, Councillor Dawes.
I noticed that originally there was a 3 million, and I understand you've made a long explanation on why the costs have gone up. But I know it's hard to. Do we know that in a few years' time you're not going to be asking a few more millions to carry on the project? Is there any way of capping those kind of costs so they don't keep coming back?
Well, I mean, the closer we get to delivering the project, the less and less likely there is of anything else needing to have money spent on it. But as I said, this money will come back first out of any proceeds of any sale. So it's really only just a timing thing. The money is put in there to get the project working, and then we get that money back first once the project does start working. So I mean, think of it as like sort of almost like an invest to save.
Okay.
As I see no one else wishing to comment, I move that proposals 1 and 2 are agreed. Agreed? Yeah. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Helen and Simon, for the very full explanation. Item 11 is the residential rent setting policies. They are page 25 to 51 with the recommendations on page 26. It will be introduced again by Councillor Wales, and the officers present are Julie Shooter with, she's got backup, John Littlemore there. Only because my notes say otherwise. Here with her crew is Julie Shooter, and Councillor Wales, would you like to introduce the report?
Yes, it's a lot of housing things on tonight with a revolving door of cast of supporters, so I'm very grateful to them for being out tonight. So the paper you have before you here on the rent and service charge setting policies, the documents outline the way Maidstone Borough Council Housing sets its rents. There's a separate policy for each tenure group. There's social and affordable, Maidstone Property Holdings, and then the temporary accommodation. And these policies will all be made available to current residents and other stakeholders via the council's web pages. Each policy outlines the approach taken to set and raise rents and service charges, primarily influenced by the government's published rent standard documents. There is a confirmation from the government that rents will increase by CPI plus 1% going forwards for social housing, and there is a maximum possible increase set at 7%. The 2025-26 increase is set at CPI plus 1%. And the CPI in September 2024, which was the reference point, was 1.7. So the maximum possible is 1% above that, which is 2.7. Maidstone Property Holdings rents are set at local market rates at the time of letting. Currently, the TA rents, temporary accommodation rents, are set to reflect the 2011 local housing allocation rates, allowance rates rather, where residents are accommodated both in Maidstone Borough Council housing or in properties provided by other landlords. In line with housing benefit guidance, it's proposed to continue for rent charged to residents accommodated through other landlords. This paper recommends that Maidstone Borough Council housing for owned and leased properties begins to charge rents at 2024 LHA levels in line with the housing benefit guidance. This higher level of housing benefit entitlement for residents would increase income to Maidstone Borough Council housing by approximately £600,000 per annum, and you'll have seen that in the budget report, based on the current 160 units of accommodation owned and managed on short leases. The benefit of this increased income contributes to Maidstone Borough Council continuing to provide council housing for temporary accommodation residents, giving our homelessness services easy access to directly managed accommodation, which is safe, warm and dry. And you'll know from previous conversations we've had here how we're increasing our stock of owned and let properties, which has the advantage, A, of being generally better than those on the open market because we keep ours to a higher standard. And this extra income of £600,000 per annum will enable that process to be able to carry on. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Oliver?
I think for that I should defer to Julie Shooter because she was here and neither you nor I were.
Guidance up until now has required that we set them all at the 2011 levels, and it was due to a government change that this opportunity to change to more recent levels has come about. So, yeah, there wasn't an opportunity to do that beforehand.
So it still seems like quite a big step change as opposed to a gradual like one doing 25%.
So the changing guidance is that we can now set them at the current levels. So I suppose it had got behind, and yeah, I can appreciate what you're saying. One would normally perhaps soften that blow, but because we have to comply with the housing benefit guidelines, they're the options to either do it at the 2011, which we were doing, or to take the opportunity to do it at the 2024 level now.
Can I just clarify, Julie, that a lot of it is around the local housing allowance? Is that what we're saying? And if people are on benefits, that money comes from the government anyway. So actually, the tenants will not be paying if they're in receipt of UC or the old housing benefit.
So people in temporary accommodation, yeah, more often than not is housing benefit rather than UC. But yeah, that would be covered. The point is that housing benefit will cover the 2024 level now, so that people aren't out of pocket.
I think that's what concerned people. Councillor Dawes?
Yeah, I understand that it's a government change that allows a 55% plus increase on rent. But for people that are at their worst possible way, because there are people on universal credit that are quite at a desperate stage, having a 55% increase, I mean, anybody in this room, if they had a 50% mortgage or rent, will be crying their heart out. So I'm wondering, how do we actually prepare those people to not feel like this is being put on them, but actually being put on their universal credit housing? Because I'm quite scared. It's January months. It's the month's most depressing of the year. So I feel for those people on how they would receive the news.
Yes, but the point being, if the rents were lower, the tenant wouldn't get the difference in the money. It comes through the amount that we get comes straight from the government. It doesn't go to the tenant, does it? It comes straight from the government. So if we charge nothing, we would get nothing from the government. If we charge the maximum, we get that, but the tenant doesn't get the difference.
Sorry, Councillor Millam, did you want to come in? And then Councillor Rodwell, did you indicate as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, you covered what I was asking Annie about. The housing benefit covers this. So we're increasing the rent so that we get it back in the housing benefit. The actual tenants aren't going to be feeling this. I hate acronyms without explanations. PSL, private sector landlord. Yep. I noticed that the ones at the bottom that have lovely great big increases is private sector landlords. I not all landlords and all that, but
Yeah, sorry, the private PSL for us is where we lease properties from private landlords. So we pay the landlord, and then we let the property to the people in temporary accommodation, and then they pay us the rent.
So private landlords won't be profiting off of this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millen. That's a really good point. Councillor Rodwell.
Thank you. Just drawing attention to 5.4, it's likely that most, if not all, will be found to be eligible for full housing benefit, leaving the one resident who would be directly financially impacted. These cases would be closely supported. How will this one person be supported? What measures are put in place because of obviously the large hike?
So it looks like I've got some of the numbers wrong.
Page is it on, Councillor Rodwell?
Page 31.
Thank you.
So I have a small housing team, and we have very close relationships with all of the residents. There aren't so many that we don't know them. So we are very much aware of their situation. So obviously we've not had this before, but I would commit to us actually obviously sit down having a conversation with them. We've got opportunities where we could house them, so we wouldn't put them in an expensive place to live, so we might make a different decision in terms of where they are temporarily living whilst we're conscious of their situation. But I can make sure that a good deal of thought is given to how that works.
So they wouldn't be penalised, they wouldn't be worse off because of this decision?
Sorry, I thought I'd pressed it. If that person is still with us, then we will have a conversation with them and consider the implications of what we're doing with those individuals. I'm going to work closely with the housing benefit team as well and plan it so that we implement it in a planned way. Thank you.
Yeah. Before I bring Councillor Wilby in, so would that person be, and bearing in mind they're in temporary accommodation and the whole aim is to move them on from temporary accommodation as quickly as possible, would that person be entitled to discretionary housing payment to help out in relation to that, or could we take it away and let us, come on John, sorry. The backup crew is here.
Potentially, yes. But also you'll note in 5.2 that there are if there's an exceptional circumstance, then there is established case law that we as a local housing authority can adjust somebody's rent to reflect their means. So that's an alternative that we can look at as well.
Thank you, Mr. Littlemore. And I was just crossing the I's and dotting the T's because even if it's only one person, it'll be all over Facebook. We're penalising people. So I think we're just trying to be creative around how can we help if that one person is still in that situation. Councillor Wilby.
Yes, thank you. You mentioned about the extra revenue of roughly 600,000. Is that being ring-fenced and being used? You mentioned the budget. I apologise, I haven't read that section of the budget. Is that being reinvested then in actually getting more temporary accommodation, or how's that extra revenue being used?
The 600,000 you'll see from the budget report is a budget saving, but it means that we won't have to make any other savings elsewhere. So it means the other funds are being ring-fenced because this is being offered up as a saving.
Right, thank you very much, everyone. So the recommendations are on page 26. I have not had any indications that there's any amendments to these. So the committee are asked to consider the recommendation that the attached appendices to the report be approved, the revised charge calculation be applied to all Maidstone Borough Council owned and short-term lease temporary accommodation, and that the Head of Housing and Regulatory Services, in agreement with the Head of Finance, be given delegated authority to amend temporary accommodation rental charges in exceptional cases outlined by Mr Littlemore, as set out in section 5 of the report. Is that agreed? Thank you, everyone. So now is where the agenda's a bit rejigged. So we have the corporate strategy, which is on pages 96 to 170, with the recommendation on page 97, and that's to be introduced by Councillor Jeffrey and, hooray, the same officer that's on my list, and Anna Collier, Head of Insight Communities and Governance. And obviously, with recent announcements, the long term of the corporate strategy may be out of our hands, but over to you, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Councillor Cleater, and thanks, Anna. Yeah, the world is changing a bit too fast for everyone's liking, I think. So you are right, and I'll come back to that point after I've introduced this. So as you are very much aware, we have a new administration, and in order to frame our budget and our policies and our and what we want to do, we basically needed a new corporate strategy. The previous one was called a strategic plan, but we've renamed it because we like to rename things. We've worked with the Local Government Association on building this, initially through a series of workshops. We've sought member input and again had one large workshop. We've had public consultation, the results of which are in your pack. And we have spent a phenomenal amount of time honing, refining and polishing this document. The route for this will be through the packs initially. It'll go to overview and scrutiny, it'll go to Cabinet, and it gets signed off by full council. So all 49 members will be voting on it. The strategy itself hopefully spells out a different set of nuances for the future, and we've built it around, obviously, around the future, and with this mission of putting people and the environment first. And for those of you who know bottom line accounting, you've got people, planet, and profit. Well, we're kind of ignoring the profit, the economy bit, because frankly, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing are people and the environment. So we're putting those first. The economy will do what it wants to do. It will support the work we're going to do, but it's not the primary goal. We've got 4 priorities. One is around very much around the future, adapting the place that is the Borough of Maidstone to be a high-quality place that is ready for the changing environment and climate and so forth. So, as we know, as we can see every night on our screens, the climate is crashing around in various places around the world, causing utter devastation. Let's hope it doesn't happen here, but we have clearly had things like 40 degrees of heat, which killed quite a lot of people in the country. So what can we do to adapt our borough to mitigate some of that impact? The second priority is sort of builds on that. It talks about resilient communities. It talks about community cohesion. How do we strengthen our communities? Priority 3 is quality homes. As you'd expect, homes are our thing. So how do we ensure that homes are insulated, heated, and the ones that are built are of the best quality that we can possibly get? And then finally, the fourth priority is around, but it almost brings us back full circle to the mission. It's talking about an economy that's fairer for people and planet. So this is, you've all heard me witter on about donut economics and how, you know, we've got to support people to meet social need without breaking the environmental limits. So priority 4 takes us down that route. Anna's team are developing or have developed a suite of key performance indicators that will start to feed through to the PAC meetings that demonstrate progress towards these priorities, and the outcomes are in the paper. We also have in the papers a year 1 plan, and this is where it starts to get a bit interesting. The year 1 plan falls out of the corporate strategy. It gives additional detail on what we want to achieve in this first year, and the budget, which Mark will pick up in a second, reflects that year 1 plan. So we've budgeted for all the stuff you can see in there. Clearly, as Councillor Cleater pointed out, our time is increasingly limited. We don't quite know exactly how much time we've got left. So we have started the conversations about what are there things that we need to bring forward and prioritise even further than we would otherwise, because we could have 2 years left, we could have 1 year left. We don't yet know. We'll find out in the next few months. But ultimately, we need to deliver as much as we can before we disappear, and make sure some of the stuff that we hand over to the new unitary authority, whatever that might look like, is in a good shape for them to pick up, that we've set a direction of travel so that they don't head off in completely different directions. However, we do not have time to even begin to have those conversations in terms of this strategy. So the strategy is going to have to sit as it is. We're going to have to take it through the process to get it through, ultimately through council, and in the background there may be stuff that we deprioritise and come back and have conversations about prioritising, just so we can leave this borough and this council in the best possible position for the future. I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions? Councillor Parfitt and then Councillor Millam.
I just wanted to ask, in resilient communities, this food strategy, what's that? And who is it for?
So in effect, what we're kind of thinking is, how do we connect people to the working farms around us, for example? How do we? We've obviously got the food larder that we've got a new contract for. How does that connect to our very large farming community? How do we work within the town itself? Do we look at things like food forests within the town? And so it's very much it is a connecting thing, but it's also making sure that we maintain some of the support mechanisms that we've got. So the food larder being the most obvious.
So is that supporting? I suppose I want to know what the direction of travel is. Is it sort of us saying to farmers, this is what we want you to do, this is how we think you should be farming, or what we want you to be producing? Or is it a mechanism for enabling our farmers and that community to get their produce and what they're producing out into the community? That's quite important to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is probably more of the latter, if I'm honest. But in terms of what is produced locally for people of Maidstone, well, that's a conversation between the people of Maidstone and the farmers. What is the art of the possible and what isn't the art of the possible? But ultimately, it is absolutely working with the farming communities to see how we can support them and connect them and the more urban communities in particular.
I have got more questions, but perhaps if other people would like to have a go, and then I can just come back.
Councillor Millen.
Oh boy. You know I'm going to be a broken record with this HMO stuff, but that's what I'm going to be talking about. Because on the survey, everything that came up, well not everything, but most things that came up, I was going, well, HMOs exacerbate that, HMOs are a cause of that, HMOs, you know, things like on-street parking, that was the lowest satisfaction rating. The waste collection, I know that the whole service thing was a problem, but it can't be, it's not going to be helping that we've got little tiny roads in Fant Ward which are overrun with cars from HMOs, 6 extra bins from HMOs. It's just absolute carnage. People saying that the answering that they could influence decision in their local area has declined. I know that from personal experience. There's people in my ward who are furious because they can complain and complain and complain about all these HMOs in their area having an impact on their area where they're living, and nothing happens, and they put their comments on the portal and nothing happens, and it gets rejected. We've got a HMO in our area that's been rejected and nothing's happened. It's just still there as a 15-bed HMO. It's not 15, but you know, it's just ridiculous. And these sort of things, like, it's all very well and good to say, oh, we're going to improve our green spaces and we're going to raise the standards in the private rented sector, but unless this is actually changed with the HMO stuff, it means nothing. Because with HMOs, talking about it comes into everything. It comes into, even with the health, like we're being asked again to mask in the hospitals and at the GP surgeries. What if we have another pandemic like we had? These people, a lot of my residents now live in HMOs where they have communal living space. What are they meant to do to protect themselves? And a lot of them are people that work in the NHS and work in these sorts of industries that are going to be, HMOs are going to be super spreaders. Yeah. So I'm just very concerned with everything that's happening with the council, that we said about bringing things forward, things that are urgent. This is urgent because we can't, the damage from HMOs is irreversible. Once a HMO is a HMO, no family is buying a HMO to turn it back into a family home. And all these areas around the town centre are going to have this irreversible damage. And if it's not fixed in the next 1, 2, 3 years, it's up to a UA, and Sevenoaks isn't going to care that we've got HMOs in this area, because as long as they're not in Sevenoaks. Sorry.
Sorry, with your contacts in the NHS, one of the issues around HMOs is that, as you've raised, a lot of them are working for the NHS when the NHS has sold off all its accommodation for staff. So as whatever happens in local government reorganisation, it's likely to be on NHS boundaries. What influence can we have to say, actually, if you're encouraging people to come to work in the NHS, one of the things they need, whether they're a porter or a consultant, is decent accommodation to live in. And I suppose that's one for the future, but a very good point to bring up. You want to respond now to Councillor Jeffrey, to Councillor Millen?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Millen. So, taking bit by bit, occasionally houses do go back from HMOs to houses, because I know I've done it. I bought my house before last. I did exactly that. But I do agree it's not the usual way. So under the Year 1 action plan, in the final point, the 12th action, it talks about delivering the documents, the designers delivering the local plan documents that will underpin the current set of policy suites. The HMO has got a number of routes it can go down in terms of what we can do. We considered whether or not the Article 4 work could be done. There isn't the evidence base in that, but we are going to start building the evidence base. So it's making sure we collect that so that at some point, if we get enough evidence, we can enact that. We considered whether or not to have HMO policy as part of a design planning document. We can't deliver a DPD before the end of our council reign. So if we did that, we can't do it. So we are going down the line of a supplementary planning document. I believe that has been drafted because I believe it's on the agenda for my informal cabinet tomorrow. And that's a much quicker document. So we will get that hopefully coming through the PAC cabinet route over the next few months, so that you'll get the opportunity to input into that. And then once we've agreed that at cabinet, it can be used admittedly only for the HMOs over 6 units, but we can use it for those, and hopefully it will help. And obviously, alongside that, as I say, we are starting to collect the information so that we can reduce that threshold of 6 downwards in terms of the Article 4. So yes, it is exercising us all. Clive, did you want to?
Yes, I mean, obviously, as the Cabinet Member for the Environment, it does impact quite a lot on my staff. You've mentioned waste collection already, and has caused some difficulties as we have had to get in smaller vehicles for specialist locations, both in the urban and the rural area. I know it can seem like nothing very much is happening, but in fact, almost immediately, there was a slight delay because very little happened until after the general election. But pretty much as soon as the new administration was actually able to start work properly, work has been ongoing on looking at all the various directions we could go with dealing with HMOs. Let's be clear, a HMO in a proper place, in the right location, treated properly, is not a bad thing. There are people who need this form of accommodation, and if they didn't have that, would be homeless. So, in the right place, dealt with properly, and with the right standards, these are actually things that provide a positive to the area, so we shouldn't forget that. What we're trying to do as a council is bring in supplementary rules which actually look not just at which look mainly at the issue of quality, because we can't necessarily stop them from happening, but what we can do is make sure that they happen in locations and in a way that there is that quality thresholds are met and people have accommodation that they can actually live in without feeling oppressed, as well as having a reasonable effect on the neighbours. As the Leader of the Council says, we are pretty much there with the drafting of the document. We do look at a number of routes, but doing an SBD is quicker because whilst there is a need for some consultation, it won't be valid without it. The consultation threshold is much lower than a development plan document, a DPD, and that is in essence the huge difference in time, because the consultation stages one has to go through with a DPD are quite onerous and very time consuming, and we felt that this was an issue that needed resolving earlier rather than later, so that's why we've chosen to go down this route. But a lot of officers and members, including my colleague Councillor Harwood, have put a lot of work into this, and we are, I think, pretty much, well, subject to tomorrow's discussion, we'll be going forward with that, and I hope that meets some of your concerns.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Parfitt, you had a couple more questions.
Sorry, I'm not with it today. The corporate strategy year 1 plan. So I'm looking at the 500,000 to establish the nature recovery fund, and my first thought was, oh my God, where's all that money coming? That's a lot of money, £500,000. And then I go across the page to see what you want to achieve with that, and then I think, well, that's a drop in the ocean. You know, and I suppose I'm just wondering. And there's also the £55,000 for delivering mitigation. And I just wanted to know if there's more meat on the bones. Is this just aspirational, or have you got schemes in mind? Now, it's not my borough ward, but my county division, I've got some brilliant flood mitigation that the farmers have put in. These reservoirs that have been amazing for wildlife. I think a lot of the funding actually came from the Environment Agency. But, you know, when I went to visit them, the farmer said to me, he said, it's brilliant, and, you know, they're basically holding water to prevent sort of flooding. But of course, we know flooding is actually important for the land as well, that we need a certain amount of flooding to refertilise our fields and that kind of thing. I think it's the rate of runoff that's actually important. And he said, this is not going to solve all the problems. He said, but 20 might. You know, if you're looking at yielding and all of that area. So I just want to make sure, and I've always said I'm absolutely in support of these kind of projects, but I don't want to just have little pots of money going here, little pots, and to no effect. And I think the devil is in the detail, and it is really important to know that if we are committing this amount of money, that where it's going and it's actually going to have an impact. That's my only concern, because like I say, it's an awful lot of money, but then when you look at what you want to do, you think, that's not going to go very far.
I'm sure we could spend that money 100 times over. And therefore we are going to be prioritising getting the maximum benefit. I'm aware Councillor Summerskill has been spending the last couple of months reviewing different sites, looking at different options. As you may know, he's I think he's one of the country's experts on flooding, for example, isn't he? So he has got all of that in his mind, and it's not just about flooding; it's about nature recovery as well. So we haven't made any decisions as to what goes where, but we will be doing that at some point fairly soon, and we'll maximise this money. And if you've got another 100 times that, you can bung our way. That'd be even more helpful.
So this money will be put to one side, but can I be reassured that whatever you want to spend it on comes back to us as councillors and committees, so we can look, as I say, the devil, it will come back to us?
Yes.
And I did have one more question. This about the 49,000, again, this, oh sorry, next page, property decarbonisation, helping people make their homes more energy efficient. Again, absolutely brilliant idea. I mean, I live in my house built in 1912, and the older part of my house is absolutely perishingly cold. You know, I'm constantly wrapped up in it. I would love somebody to come along and inject the walls or whatever they do to make it warmer. And again, I just want to know where this 49, you know, we've got 175,000 residents in the borough. What can we actually do with that that's actually going to make a difference?
It is. You've got a modern house compared to mine, and I'm sure I can be more frozen than you. I'm sure of that. This is for an additional person to work within that team to support people getting the grants that are out there to warm their homes up, basically.
So paying somebody to access more funding.
Yeah, to advise, etc. Yeah.
Councillor Dawes.
I had one question on the same page, 116. It's about the taking actions to improve air quality. It says there's a pot of money for 25,000 to update air quality management plan. So how old is the air quality management plan, and what will it be achieving?
I've been a little bit rude about our current air quality management plan over the years, as Councillor Parfitt's smiling there. I've asked the team to go away and look at the best practice around the country. The current set of actions in there, I don't think are anywhere near strong enough. So I've asked them to basically look outside, look at the best practice, look at what is possible and achievable, and set some even stronger targets. So currently the legal limit for nitrous oxides is 40 parts 40 per parts per million. The current World Health Organization's safe limit is just 10. So whilst we don't have to do anything if we're below 40, we're still killing people, and that doesn't feel very good. So what more can we do, basically? And we haven't got any quick answers on that at the moment because the work hasn't yet started. But we will be pulling together the best of the plans around the country and seeing what is possible.
Sorry, I had a complementary question to this.
Go on then.
Do we actually currently have sensors that measure the air quality on a regular basis within Maidstone? Okay.
Yeah. So I can send you the air. I can't remember what the S stands for. It's the air status report, air quality status report, something like that. So there are something like 50, 60 passive tubes around the borough, mostly in the town centre itself, that are doing monthly monitoring of air pollution for nitrous oxides in various strategic spots. We also have 2 live monitors. These are really quite interesting. There's one on Upper Stone Street and one on Detling Hill, I think. And you can go on to kentair.org.uk and download live data. It puts it out there every 5 minutes or something, and you can go back years and see a huge dip when we went into lockdown of the air pollution. It just falls off a cliff, and it's wonderful. Everyone can breathe, and then everyone's now driving again. But you can see the trends over quite long time. So it's fascinating data if you like data.
Thank you. So I see no further indications to speak. Anna, did you want to come in with anything, or has everything been covered? Okay. So there is one recommendation to review the corporate strategy and year 1 action plan and provide feedback to the Cabinet. I'm happy to propose it from the Chair. Yeah, agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We now jump back on the agenda, and the medium-term financial strategy and budget proposals on page 52 to 95 as they pertain to this Policy Advisory Committee. Obviously, other policy advisory committees will have had their say or have their say on the bit that pertains to their pack. There's one recommendation on page 53, and Mark Green will be introducing that. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report is part of the process of setting a budget for the Council for next year, and it comprises a draft new medium-term financial strategy, revenue budget proposals, and a draft capital programme. And similarly to the corporate strategy, most of the work in this report was completed before publication of the government's devolution white paper, so it assumed that Maidstone Council would continue as an independent entity. That assumption obviously needs to be revised, but we're working on the basis that for next year, 25-26, we have to set a budget, as we always have done, so there haven't been any changes to the proposal set out here. And I'll just go through the 3 sets of appendices that you've got. First of all, Appendix 1 is the medium-term financial strategy, which reflects the corporate strategy and shows how it is delivered in financial terms. It talks about the constraints within which the Council operates, and it gives some scenarios which we've used in our financial planning. And then getting into the detail, so far as it affects this pack, there are revenue budget proposals, which are on pages 57 to 58 of the papers, and they're summarised in Appendix B. And they reflect the corporate strategy. So, for example, you've got proposals for growth for citizen engagement, supporting the community and voluntary sector, and for an annual parish conference. and that reflects the priorities in the new corporate strategy and the Year 1 action plan that has been discussed already. And taking all the budget proposals together across the council, they will allow the council to set a balanced budget for next year, given the assumptions in the medium-term financial strategy. Now that's the revenue budget. Also very important is the capital programme, which is described on page 62 of the report and summarised in Appendix C. And this committee has within its remit the biggest element of the capital programme, which is Quality Homes for Life. Now, it's worth mentioning that in order for the housing programme, Quality Homes for Life, to deliver affordable or social housing, the council has to build up money for a subsidy for that type of housing, because it wouldn't pay for itself otherwise. And the council has been doing this through a housing investment fund. And so the report is saying that in the budget report to council next month, the proposal is that more money is put into the Housing Investment Fund, as well as additional money for the Nature Recovery Fund, which will enable that housing programme actually to deliver affordable and social housing. So the recommendations are to approve the draft medium-term financial strategy and the revenue budget proposals in Appendix B and the capital programme proposals in Appendix C. And the Cabinet members and I will be happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions as it pertains to our pack in the budget pack? I think it's been really helpful to have it outlined with what affects our pack. Otherwise, sometimes we do go down a bit of a rabbit hole. Councillor Parfitt.
I do have some concerns with this. For example, £5,000. I know it's not a lot of money on the parish conference. We are councillors, and the ones that have parishes, we are actively engaged with our parish councillors. And I think it's really important that, you know, that is our job. And we should be doing that. So I don't see why there should be an extra spend here. And similarly for the citizens' engagement, I mean, I know how much work Anna put into the resident surveys. And a lot of time goes into that, a lot of resources goes into it, and you get a certain amount of feedback. You know, there's an awful lot that's done on Facebook, on social media. I mean, because you see it all the time, the press releases. I think we're doing that already. And I'm just not convinced that £100,000, to me, I don't think we should be spending that personally. I'm concerned. I think the parish conference, I just don't think that's necessary. We've got calc. These things are all being done anyway. So I can't support those things there. The dog control, I mean, I find that I was quite shocked when I saw that. Now, having, when I was the portfolio holder, I had a dangerous dog in Collier Street, and it was a really, really tricky problem to sort out, because it was a dog-on-dog attack, and what a lot of people don't know is that dogs attacking dogs is no criminal offence, even if the dog bites another dog in half, which is actually what happened. And actually dealing with that was, well, it was just awful. It was absolutely awful, and John would remember it very well, and eventually we got a resolution. But I'm just wondering what this kennelling of dogs is. Is that dogs that we take off people? Because surely that's the RSPCA that does that. It just seems a lot of, I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't spend it, because quite frankly, when I had to deal, I did not sleep for about a week with that dog situation, worrying that actually my neck would be on the line if that dog did actually attack a person. And I know that we as a council did absolutely everything we could, but our powers were extremely limited. So I'm still quite scarred from that experience. But yeah, I'd just like to know about that £52,000 for kennelling. Thank you.
And clearly, the £52,000 is a pressure based on the current set of policies that we've been working from the last budget. I'm sure Mr. Littlemore will say a little bit more about some of the plans and the kennelling itself in a second. Just to to cover off your first 2 points, the 5K for parish liaison. We get a lot of comments from parishes saying that they don't hear enough from this council, and yes, I'm not decrying the work you do at a local level. Personally, I've made a commitment to go and visit every single parish council in the borough, 37 of them. I was hopeful I could do one a month. I might have to speed up, but I'm going out to visit them personally, and we do want to get people in the room because they're saying they don't always get the information that flows down through calc. That's the feedback we're getting. Therefore, we're putting something in place to make sure they feel included. I think that's the right thing to do. In terms of engagement, sorry, I'll finish if I may. In terms of engagement, I'm absolutely certain that Facebook comments do not really give us the lived experience of what it's like to be a woman suffering violence or somebody in deep poverty. I want to make sure we're really understanding the needs of the most the people most at risk in our communities, and I think the different forms of citizens' engagement are available and will give us some better policy in the longer term. So I'm really keen that we do this. John, did you want to say any more on the kennelling?
Sorry, I think John's going to come back on the dog thing because I believe that is actually a statutory requirement for us. Is it, John?
Spot on. Yes, it is. So we as a local authority have a legal duty with regard to picking up strays, abandoned dogs and homing them. The choice is that you can destroy them after a period of kennelment or you can try to look to rehome them. There's very few providers of that service, so we're limited in who we can go to work with us to do that, and we do take the approach of trying to rehome dogs, so there is a cost incurred to that. But one of the things we're looking at is talking to our adjacent local authority to see if it's more cost effective these days to provide our own kennelling.
Thank you, John. Councillor Parfitt, I'll let you come back then. Councillor Wilby.
Sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back on the citizens' engagement. I'm not saying that Facebook is, you know, if you're a woman suffering domestic abuse, I think, yes, it's very unlikely that you're going to announce it on Facebook. What I'm saying is there are all sorts of forms of communication, and I know a lot of work goes into the resident survey. What I want to know is what do you think we are not doing, and where are you going to spend this? What are we not doing? I mean, if you can say to me, we really should be doing X, Y, and Z, and it's going to cost X, Y, and Z, then I can sort of get on board with that. But I just want to know what you think we're not doing. Does that make sense?
Sorry, so on this particular spend, this is to go towards the development of citizens' assemblies. Citizens' assemblies are a very in-depth form of engagement. So a resident survey, for example, will gather a range of views across hopefully a broad spectrum, though not always, of our residents at a fairly high level. So a bit of an up on a pulse survey, but it will give you a moment in time. Citizens' assemblies are, when they're done properly and well, and the idea is that this will fund for them to be done properly and well, allow us to engage with residents, would be representative cross-section of our community. So people are specifically targeted to be a representative demographic. They will be engaged over a significant period of time in an in-depth way, including gathering experts from, you know, nationally to come down and to talk with them on specific topics. So in this case, I think the one that the Cabinet are particularly keen and have committed to doing is to have a particular topic on violence against women and girls. So it will be an engaged group of people. There will be a specific topic title designed, and this group of people will be gathered together over a period of time, several sessions over several months, with the idea that they will engage with key stakeholders in the local area. They'll give their own views. There will be experts brought in to discuss with them, and at the end there will be a report with recommendations for the council to consider. And I think the aim is that we will be able to do at the very least one of those per year, but if not, hopefully 2.
Councillor Wilby, but stay there, Anna, because I've got a question to ask on your comments. But Councillor Wilby.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to come back on the parish engagement. Obviously, be the two-hatter as such to go with it. I would say, as good as CALC are with some of the information they feed back, in the past we sometimes have people's twist put on the information that maybe has come back from MBC to ourselves. Especially being a more urban parish, it's not always in line with what we do. And for a while we were not a member of CALC, and I think there are a couple of parishes that aren't members of CALC. I think actually the engagement directly gives all the council, all the parish councils a chance to actually have their say directly with MBC rather than going through CALC, which sometimes does get a bit hoodwinked in one direction, I think, to go with it. So I think I encourage that to you, Drew. So the 5,000 is a drop in the ocean to try, and especially with the changes that are coming through as well, we're going to have to engage a lot more with the parishes, with the devolution coming up as well. So I don't think 5,000 is a huge amount to actually be arguing over, to be honest. And I support obviously the citizen assemblies as well to go with it. So.
Thank you, Councillor Wilby. Just clarification from Anna or from yourself, Councillor Jeffrey, regarding the violence against women and girls, which obviously everyone on this committee was very committed to. One of the issues that was raised was about engagement of people with lived experience. You know, at the end of the day, I worked in mental health, but I've not got a diagnosis, so I can empathise. So all that work that's going on, will it include people with lived experience? Because I think that's critical in coming up with any policy or any intervention, if you like, from us.
Absolutely.
Sorry, so I want to caution around this, that I want to spend some time talking to various different organisations who have run similar type of events, because obviously this can be a very emotive subject, and I wouldn't want to bring anybody in and then leave them in a situation where they felt unsupported. So I thoroughly agree we need to, and on this topic, if we have a representative group in the room, women will be part of that, and most women, I think, have got a lived experience of varying degrees on it, but I want to ensure that the people that are in this room, whether they are from whatever gender, they feel supported. So we will be seeking advice on the best way of managing this topic to ensure that people feel the issues are contained and they feel held. I think that's really important. So yes, but I want to make sure that we do it in a responsible way.
Just very, very briefly to add, I mean, without that lived experience, the work would be pointless. So yes, I fully I fully agree that that those safeguards need to be in place, but the work needs to stem from that lived experience.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. That's really helpful. Councillor Wales, you wanted to speak?
Just a quick observation, really. I think we need to be careful to distinguish between information and engagement. Information is just telling people about things and hearing things back. Engagement is about helping people to get involved, to help design things, to get things changed for the better in their area. From what I've seen of posts on Facebook, these people aren't engaged. It's just a medium for complaining, whinging, griping, and not actually engaging in about how to make it better. You see these posts on Maidstone Past. Oh, it's not like it used to be. They knocked down houses, they built more roads, the roads aren't maintained, it's not like it used to be. Well, come along and help us and tell us what you really want then, not just complain about what it's not. So I think we need to be very careful about these things on social media, because that's not engagement. That's just, I say, it's just people having a moan and complaining.
Councillor Millam.
Just to have a moan and a complain. Just coming back to the £5,000 thing, I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's £5,000 more than the people of Fountain Oakwood are getting, because we don't have a parish, and I'm sure there's other places that don't have parishes. So is there a way that they're going to be made sure that they're not left out of this engagement?
Jeffrey?
Yes, so one of the comments in the white paper that we haven't been able to put in the one-year action plan is that there is this recommendation that areas are fully parished, and clearly, as you rightly point out, our town centre is the part that isn't. I've asked officers to start looking at that and working up some options, and so that we can start bringing them out for wider discussion. And understand whether or not we need a single town council, which would be a parish council across the town, or whether there's how it might be divided up, or what happens to Tovel, which is part of the town. Does that become part of a bigger parish, and so forth? So there's a dozen different options out there. But yes, it's one of the things that we've kind of has taken us. Coming from the side that we need to deal with, but yeah, you're absolutely right. That is an issue to handle quite quickly.
Interestingly enough, I live in an area that totally rejected being parished, where I live, and I also represent a ward that's not parished as well. I think what's going to be critical, whatever happens, is actually to ask the people what they want. Because sometimes as councillors or people who are interested in politics, we really get bogged down in what's really interesting to us. And I think you may probably are going to get areas that go yeah, and areas that go no, actually. I think people will look and go, well, how much is it going to cost? And I think that's, for a lot of people, will influence them, rather than whether it's good democratically. But I think what's key is to ask the people what they want. I think that's really important. Councillor Dawes?
I just want to some things that make me really laugh in what people think. There's page 162 on the resident survey, and there's somebody that say, I want all the houses to be demolished that have been built in the last 5 years. I mean, you can do a lot of asking people what they want, and ask parishes, for that matter, what they want. I know my parish and the two parishes that I represent, I've asked a lot of things, and actually they can't get it, because there's so many rules of KCC that say you can't do this and you can't do that, and so they've got plenty of view of what they want to do, but actually there's lots of red tape that say you can't be doing it anyway. So why are we engaging and actually talking about it when nothing is ever going to change? Pointless.
I suppose from the chair to him to deal with things that you can change. There will be things we can't change, but I think it's about looking and asking what we can deal with. Councillor Dawes, to be quite honest. But no, I take your point. But no, wholesale demolition of houses that were built 5 years ago. I mean, my house was built in the 50s. The whole area of Pennington Heath that's built on was farmland, so we're just stop. People need places to live, and we need to be mindful of nature and the environment, and we also need to look after people who need housing. Do you want to come in?
I was going to say, most of your ward was a park. Shepway was all part of Moat Park.
Built for DFLs, as I recall reading the history books. So, you've made some comments about not liking something. Are you proposing an amendment? And have you got a seconder? Yeah, she hasn't said yet what she wants, Councillor Dawes. Bearing in mind we have to produce a balanced budget.
Rather see £100,000 go to a charity supporting women that are fleeing domestic violence than another massive talking shop. I'm sorry, and I know I'm being really negative, but I'm just not convinced it will achieve what we want to achieve. So, choice to take those things out. But reading the room, I think I'm in the minority. Oh, sorry. Did everybody hear what I said?
So the recommendations are, and so this is where you're going to have to do your amendment. The Cabinet recommend to approve the draft medium-term financial strategy for 25-26 to 29-30 set out in Appendix A. The revenue budget proposals is set out in Appendix B. The capital strategy principles set out in 4C and the capital programme. So I am taking it that your proposal is, where it says the revenue budget set out in Appendix B, that you want to remove from that budget line the expenditure on, excuse me, I've lost it, citizens engagement, £100,000 growth, and the parish conference. Do you have a, can you do that in a formal words that makes sense, Cassie? Is there a Councillor Dawes? Right. So we've had a long discussion on this and people have explained their rationale and reasoning for whatever. So, all those in favour of the amendment, please show. All those against? That is lost. We now move substantively to the recommendations on the Housing Community Cohesion Policy Advisory Committee, as I have just read out. All those in favour, please show. All those against? Thank you. And thank you, Mark, for taking the time to do the presentation and making it easy for us to go through. Right, we are now on the last leg, as it were. Item 14, Maidstone East Sandlin Road Project Delivery and Investment Plan, formerly the Demolition and Contamination Update. That is pages 171 to 191, and there are 6 recommendations on pages 172 and 173. And this will be introduced by Councillor Wales and Philip Morris. Councillor Wales.
Thank you, Chair. So this item relates to the procurement and investment plan for the delivery of the 180 units, commercial space, landscaping and public park as part of the redevelopment of the former Royal Mail sorting office. And when I say 180 units, I mean 180 homes. The site has a resolution to grant planning, and the Memorandum of Understanding in Section 106 has been agreed. The report covers the procurement process and timeframe and proposed tenure mix of the development being delivered as 100% social rented. The report covers the 2-stage procurement process, design stage and work stage, taking into account the new requirement to achieve sign-off on the drawings from the Building Safety Regulator, currently estimated at around 8 months prior to commencement of any works. The report and appendices also provide anticipated costings for both the design stage element and the proposed works cost. Funding sources have been identified and the level of funding required from each source highlighted in the financial summary appendix. And I suppose if we need to talk about that, then we'll need to move into private session. There are options. One is to do nothing, to sell the site, or to mothball the site. And as you'll see from the report, neither of these is favoured. We need to proceed with the site. We need to proceed with 180 of social rented homes, and we need to get them through as best we can. It's also about having a city centre park and the medical facility in the site as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wales. Do we have any comments or questions? The Councillor Wales highlighted, if you have any questions on the yellow papers, we will have to move into closed session. So please be mindful of that when you put your hand up. Councillor Oliver.
So the first four, the names there, have gone through a separate tender process 2 years ago and have been working on the project for the last sort of 2 years plus. Yep.
Thank you. That's a very pertinent question, because some people won't have been on the council then, so won't have been party to that. Hand up raised by Councillor Parfitt, but do you want to, is it on the yellow paper?
It's not actually.
Oh, right. Okay. It was only because you were reading it.
I am reading it. Well, I've just done a little calculation myself. I just wanted to find out about the medical provision, where we are with that. Have we got anybody that's interested? Because I think, you know, much has been made of that.
So yeah, we have had detailed conversations with them, and their expression is to take the space, but obviously we don't have a signed document at this stage, but it is slightly sort of chicken and egg and a circular argument in that we need to be able to say or confirm that we have the planning and we're progressing, and then they will come back.
That's really good news, because I was concerned about that, because I know that it's not always the you know, the sites are not invariably, they're not the issue. It's finding the doctors to come and take on the space. So that's really heartening. I'm really pleased.
Just if I may add on that, the local health and care partnership and ICB have said that area does require an additional practice, and they are very much enthused by the space we are offering, and I've been personally in the room with them talking through some of the options. So yeah, they are very much engaged and very keen.
Right, any more questions? Right, so the recommendations on page 172 and 173, I'm happy to propose them from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilby. All those in favour? None against? Right. I now declare this meeting closed, and thank you very much, councillors. Very productive meeting.